Howdy folks, Greyhawk 4x4 coming at you again, your resident vintage gamer. It's time for another gaming vlog. Let's rock! So, we need to get caught up on the Greyhawk campaign, and then I'm going to talk a little bit about the PC game that the computer game that I'm playing right now. It's not on Steam. It's one of the few games that's not available on Steam. But we'll talk about that at the end. So, with regard to the Greyhawk campaign, this past weekend, and technically, because this is a 3-day weekend, I guess it still is the weekend, but Friday and Saturday, we did what we call a marathon session. We played on Friday night for 6 hours, and then we stopped and started back up again at noon on Saturday, and we played for almost 12 hours, almost. I think it was 11:30 p.m. So, and there's breaks and shit in there, so probably a good solid 10 hours. So that's somewhere in the neighborhood of about 16 good hours of our Greyhawk campaign, and my voice is suffering just a little bit still from that, because that's a lot of talking for a DM for, over a 2-day period, 16 hours, But where we had left off before was that our heroes were in the city of Devers, and they had resolved, at least in their mind, they had resolved as best they could the issue of the secret dagger that they had recovered from one of their family members that had found it and all that. And if you ever want to get caught up on the story to all this, you'll have to just go back and see the previous gaming vlogs, and you should be able to get caught up with no problem. So they had uncovered this, and I said that last time I didn't have it with available to show you guys because I was back there and I didn't want to get up and go get it in the middle of a video. But anyway, this is the dagger that this was what it was all about. And what it turns out is that this was not used as a weapon. This was used by the secret organization known as the Watchers to send messages. And when they first uncovered it, I had to prepare this prop. I had taken some twine that looks just like basic old twine, and tightly wrapped it around here, in addition to the regular strap for the on the sheath, to give the implication that that this isn't going to be used as a weapon, because you wouldn't be able to easily get it out, with it being tied with the twine, and that whoever was carrying it was using that for additional security, so maybe it didn't fall out and they didn't lose it. So that was the first hint. And what happened was, when they took it to the head of Devers, the city of Devers, Magus, he revealed that this is used as the method for transmitting messages. And how he did that was he has, like on his desk, he has a receiver that this slides into a slot, and it magically releases the top part that comes off. This, unfortunately, doesn't come apart. I wish it did. This is actually a letter opener that I've had for years and years and years, and I thought that it looked cool enough to use as a prop, and I just threw it in there kind of off the cuff when we were doing the original Facebook adventure, or Facebook encounter that we did, and I thought, well, what do they find on that consumed Trent? And again, if you need to, you can go back and get caught up on the story with the previous vlogs. And I thought, well, I know, I had this. It was probably within where I could see it handily, and I was like, ooh, I could just say they found this dagger. And then I had to come up with an idea. What the hell does the dagger do? Is it just a dagger? Is it valuable? What And then I came up with the idea of it being used for messages. So anyway, that's the only way that it can be opened is a receiver slot, that a magical item that is on the heads of state. Each of them has one on their desk that they put one of these into, and it comes apart, and that's how messages, that's how they know that it's a legitimate message, is that it comes this way, and they know it can't, there's no way it should have been able to be tampered with. So that's what makes these very valuable, and that's why the Watchers don't want them to fall in anyone else's hands. You can imagine how, if this did fall in someone else's hands, and they were somehow to get a powerful magic user to get it open and replace a message to change, you could see how that would be bad. So that's why there was such an interest in getting this back. So anyway, that is the dagger, and it has since been, the Watchers have been notified that by Magus that he has recovered the dagger and that he has dealt with those that had knowledge of it, because the Watchers don't want any witnesses to knowing about this system. So they're hoping, our adventurers are hoping that satisfies the Watchers at least a little bit, so that they're not constantly going to be hunted, but they don't know. So anyway, that's where we had left off, and there was another issue of this Alexander Havenhurst, who had come into town shortly after the adventurers had first got into Devers, and introduced himself and explained that he wanted to hire them to take care of somebody, a fairly predominant person in the city, who had killed his brother. And even though it was, I wouldn't say a self-defense type thing, the Randar, the person who did that, was protecting another party member of the previous group of people who played through my campaign that we deemed their group as the Seekers. And so nevertheless, this brother Alex had harbored this resentment for quite a while, and he finally decided to come back and find somebody to take care of him, because if he did it himself, it would be obvious, and he would get, it would be considered murder and so forth, and it would be unsanctioned because the Assassin's Guild didn't do it, and so forth. And so he thought, well, if I can just hire some adventurers to do it. Of course, they didn't take to the idea. Luckily, they had a member in the party who sought out the head of the Thieves Guild, and there was a discussion and so forth about how things are sanctioned and all that. And the bottom line was, this Alex person then went to the Thieves Guild to try and get a sanction hit, and because of political problems and complications, they would not sanction it, or at least the head of the Thieves Guild would not sanction it. So then he resorted to putting up bounty posters up all over town, which is, of course, against the rules. If you want someone killed, you have to go through the Thieves Guild and Assassin's Guild, and you've got to do it the sanctioned way. And he was having none of it. He just started putting up bounty posters and everything. And so our friend Randar joined our group. He'd already joined our group for protection. He figured, well, I'll adventure with you guys. At least I'm in a group where if somebody comes after me, I've got a chance of survival, as opposed to just staying in the city waiting for someone to whack me. So, needless to say, at a certain point, he gets attacked. And they find out that these bounties are out there by Alex. And so when they were talking to Magus about this problem, they were also talking about that problem as well. And it was offered as a solution, maybe, that somehow Alex would just go away. And so at some point, one of the party members comes up with the idea, what if Randar takes out a sanctioned hit on Alex the right way, so forth. And so they go back to Dorian Lightfoot, the head of the Thieves Guild, and they present that, and he thinks about it, and he goes, I don't see why he couldn't, particularly because someone has got a legal bounty out on him and so forth. So he said, yes, he goes, as long as he doesn't take part in it. He cannot take part in the hit if he's the one who's taking out the sanctioned hit. So, and he says, I also don't want it done in the city. It has to be done outside the city. So our group devises a plan, and they lure him successfully into it, and they waylay him in the street. He had a couple bodyguards, but they take them all out. And so they're successful there in eliminating that threat. The problem is, of course, some of those bounty posters, the word had spread, even though they've started taking them down when they find them. So there could still be some freelancers out there that are going to try and attack Randor. So that storyline is still continuing, although it's somewhat resolved. And then they had to go back to the moat house for the Village of Hamlet module, which they had already cleared to the boss, but they had missed some areas, and they knew they had missed some areas. So they decided to go back and finish that off to see if maybe there was some treasure that they missed. And there was a little bit. It wasn't a lot, but so they did that. And, of course, their notoriety has been growing. And we had the NPC Cloche, a Volo, for lack of a better term, type character who is a cartographer, and he's actually known as a chronicler. He had been boasting about their exploits and so forth, and he had come up with the nomenclature of calling them the Nomads of Devers. And some of them were okay with it. One particularly liked it, but some of them didn't like it, and particularly our chaotic neutral / evil gnome assassin illusionist really doesn't like it, because the acronym, of course, for Nomads of Devers is NOD, and Cloche had started telling people, you could even recognize it, show respect to them. If you see them walk into a tavern, you could simply nod to them and whatnot, and it would be an unspoken sign of respect and so forth. And of course, the gnome hates this because he doesn't want notoriety. He doesn't want to be really known. He wants to be under the radar and so forth. Well, at some point, the bards in the Devers Tavern wrote a song about the Nomads of Devers and about their exploits and so forth. And it really started to piss off the gnome. So he went over and explained it to them that, hey, you're not going to play that song anymore. And the head of the troupe, just a two-man bard group thing, Pete, he says, hey, man, he's kind of what we would call a beatnik back in the day, Hey, man, I'm not going to be censored by you. That's my creativity. I can play what I want, and so forth. And the gnome is like, no, you don't understand. You are not going to play that song anymore. Do you understand? And he basically gets it across to him that if he wants to continue consuming oxygen, they will stop. And matter of fact, he roused them out of town. They leave town. He makes it apparently clear to them that they are going to leave town. So they decide they're going to leave town. So the group continues their thing, going, coming back from the moat house and training up. They got a couple levels and so forth, and they had to go out to Nob, when they had gone back to that second time to the moat house, they had already rousted them, the bards, from the tavern in Devers, and they get back to Hamlet, and lo and behold, that's where they had moved on from. They had moved to Hamlet, and so they walk in, and here's Pete and Phil, these two bards, and they're playing there now. And of course, the color drains from Pete's face because he's like, oh shit, now I got to deal with this guy again. And he really doesn't. He's really resistant to it, and everything. And and I can't remember. I think they were even playing the song that they weren't supposed to play. And of course, the gnome is like, hey, what the hell are you doing? And he's like, hey, we're not in Devers anymore. We left like we said we would. Yeah, but you're not supposed to be playing that song. Bottom line is, the gnome takes him outside, color sprays his ass, and beats the crap out of him. I mean, within an inch of his life and so forth. And so, at some point, one of the barmaids goes out and finds him and brings him back in and takes him upstairs to let him rest and get him healed up and so forth. And of course, the gnome in the middle of the night goes into his room and gets right over him and wakes him up and is like, "Hi, Pete, how are you?" And he starts just tormenting him, and So he scares Pete out of bed. Pete's got to crawl out the door to the tavern because he thinks that the gnome's going to kill him. And so he goes, he's going insane now. The gnome's literally driving him insane. So he goes off down the road. So that's all happening. And they decide at some point to head on to Nob. And this is after they return to Devers to sell their stuff or whatever. And then they decide to go to Nob, which is just short of where the Temple of Elemental Evil is. And it's a really bad town. It's basically Mos Eisley in the Star Wars universe, the den of villainy and thievery and all that stuff. And they're even warned before they go there. Look, there are no good people in Nob. It's a shithole. You got to be careful there. There's a lot of evil. There's a lot of pirates and thugs and all that type of stuff. And so they go back to Nob, or they go to Nob. And at one point they decide that they don't even want to stop in Nob. They just want to go straight to the temple because that's what they wanted. They want to investigate the temple. And they ask, are there any beggars? Or one of the other party members says, are there any beggars that are on the street that maybe we could just ask for directions and pay them some money, to get directions to the temple? And I go, yeah, as a matter of fact, there's one over there. And I go, from a distance, you almost kind of recognize him, and then as you get closer, you realize, it's Pete! he has drug himself to Nob, or he got on a cart, someone picked him up, a caravan picked him up to give him a ride after he begged him or whatever, and they dumped him off in Nob, and he's penniless, and he's injured, and so he can't really play, and he doesn't have his instrument anyway, and he's laying there, he's trying to get money, by begging or whatever, and sure enough, and of course the gnome goes over, hey Pete, and he just starts tormenting him again, to where Pete just starts trying to scurry off, trying to get away, and everything, and it's just been nonstop. Poor Pete, you don't get on the gnome's bad side, especially a chaotic neutral, basically chaotic evil gnome, a gnome assassin, and so they head off to the temple. And that's where we stopped. They got to the entrance, and we said, that's enough, we're going to stop. So that was the end of the marathon. That's kind of the short condensed, even though it's the 17 minutes. And that is the short and condensed version, trust me. So now our characters are, like, a couple of them might be, one's 4th level for sure, a couple of them are 3rd level, a couple of them are 2nd level, because in 1st edition, the classes, they graduate faster on levels. Some only need X amount of XP, and others need a lot of XP, and so forth. So, anyway, that's where they're at. And then I also wanted to show this real quick. I don't know if you guys I hope you guys can see this. Let's see what we can do here, if we can get that. Let's see if we can get that on the... And let's see if I can get this to focus for you, because I really would like that if it would. Because this is... Some of you will recognize this as the Dungeon Master from... Let's see if we can do... Focus, please. You got to see what he's doing, if it will work here. Look at it. Maybe not. Maybe. One of these days they're going to get a camera that'll actually focus probably. Anyway, that is the Dungeon Master from the cartoon. The original Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. You can kind of see it there. He is flipping off, basically flipping off the party. So, as the DM, I was wearing my pin proudly with a shirt that said something about, it's called Splash Damage, Cry to the Cleric, and then my little DM here is giving him the finger. Thought that was kind of, found her on eBay for $10, free shipping. So I was like, any of you old schoolers that remember the D&D cartoon, if you might still be able to find them. Although I think it was a limited run, because this is 59 out of 100. So it sounds like they only made 100 of them. So anyway, that's it for the... Oh, I wanted to talk about, real quick, started playing that Planescape Torment, and which is one of the old school Black Isle Studios and BioWare created those games, you know, Baldur's Gate, Icewind Dale, etc., and Planescape Torment. And everybody has said that Planescape Torment is one of the best computer role-playing games of all time. So I have started it, and I've probably got a couple hours into it. And it's pretty cool how it starts you out. I'm not going to spoil any of it for you or whatever. But it's based on this campaign setting. There's the Planescape campaign setting. And there is a lot of material for Planescape. I have quite a bit. I bought a collection. At one point, I had an opportunity to buy a collection. A guy had a bunch of different stuff he was selling, and a big portion of it was Planescape stuff. So, I'm really enjoying the game. I'm afraid that it could absorb too much of my time, though, if I'm not careful. So, if that's something that you're interested in, you may want to do a little research. You can get the game itself on GOG, Good Old Games, and it's not on Steam yet. They did make a early access one called Penumbra or something like that, Planescape Penumbra or Numbra or something like that, and that's supposed to be the spiritual successor to the Torment. So everybody that loved Torment is big on that. So anyway, that's the gaming vlog. I'm going to do a separate video on, you can see some minis and stuff back here that I'm going to do a separate video on after this, because I'm going to do some comparisons with old school stuff and the new stuff for 5th edition, the difference in minis and stuff. So other than that, catch you guys on the flip side.